So I'm Sam. Yeah, I'm just going to sort of be helping Emily out with asking her questions later on your behalf. So for any of you who haven't been here before, the way that this is going to work is basically Emily will deliver a talk, and then after that we'll go into the Q&A session. The easiest thing really is probably to just type any questions you have into the chat box, and you can find this at the bottom of your screen, and you can just write a question and I will hopefully read them out correctly for you. And Emily can answer them. If you do feel like you want to kind of ask in your virtual self, and you can come on screen and ask the question that way if you prefer. But yeah, that'll be it from me really, and I'll just sort of pass over to Emily, who co-founded Beach Guardian, I believe in 2017, which is just an amazing organisation, do some amazing work for Cornwall, and I just think it's really impressive that someone sort of my age, Emily's my course mate, she's just a great all-round person and has done just some brilliant things with this organisation. So she will tell you about that now. So yeah, I'll pass on to Emily.
Oh, thanks very much, Sam. Such a lovely words of support there. And thank you again for asking me to come on tonight and deliver this presentation. And thank you to all of you for joining. So as Sam perfectly said, I am Emily Stevenson and I'm the co-founder of Beach Guardian. And what I'd like to do this evening is give kind of a brief overview of the work that we do at Beach Guardian to empower communities. And our kind of tagline is engage, educate and empower against plastic pollution. And I usually start off my presentations by giving a brief overview to plastic pollution and what the dangers are. But I feel like we see so much online and on the news now about plastic pollution. I'm not going to go into too much detail about plastic pollution itself, but if you do have any questions about the plastic pollution that we encounter down here in the Southwest, then maybe you can pop a question in the chat box and we can talk about that a bit later. But today, I'm really just going to focus on Beach Guardian and what we do in our community. So let's try the first hurdle of sharing my screen. Hopefully this will work. There we go. There. Sam, if you could just give me a thumbs up. Yeah, we've got it. Perfect. Okay, so Beach Guardian, what do we do? Well, the best place for me to start would be the very beginning, I suppose. How did Beach Guardian start, when and where? And this is a pretty embarrassing story, actually. This is a picture of me when I was 11 years old. So 11 years ago now. And no, 12, oh my goodness, I'm a year older, 12 years ago. I basically have grown up in Cornwall. It's my home and I'm very, very passionate about conserving it. And I was at Weybridge School as a student, and we were set this project, this art project, to go down to our local beach and to find things on the beach, natural items, so seaweed, feathers, sand, stones, pebbles, shells, that kind of thing, bring it into school and make art out of it. So 12 years ago, I went down to the beach for my art project, but I wasn't interested in the natural stuff. I started picking up the plastics and I took those into school, and it was those that I made my art project out of. And it was then that I started noticing the plastic on our beaches down here in Cornwall. And instantly I knew that I wanted to do something about it. I couldn't believe that this material was plaguing our beaches that I've spent my whole life, growing up on. So I made this website 12 years ago. It is so embarrassing. If you've started reading it, please stop. And it is still live now, cornwallbeachcombers.co.uk. But as I said, it's really, really, really embarrassing. But the idea of the website was that all of the plastic that I was collecting on our beach near to my home, I was sorting out and selling it on this website to raise money for the Marine Conservation Society. And the idea behind that was just so that other people could use the plastic to make their own artwork. So that was really where it started, and that was when I decided, I want to give my life to protecting the environment against plastic waste. And I wanted to give everything to be this marine biologist and really, really care for the oceans. So, and then this picture was taken at the very start of Beach Guardian. This is what kind of confirmed to me that I was doing the right thing and I was on the right path. So we had a reporter from the Daily Telegraph come and join us on one of our beach cleans, and they wanted to take some photographs of all of this plastic that we had been talking about. But you know, there isn't huge big piles of plastic, it's just scattered around the strand line. They wanted that one shot that really showed the scale of this issue. So I said, okay, give me a moment, I'm going to pop up into the sand dunes and I'll find you something impressive. And I pulled out this crisp packet, this Walker's crisp packet, that was actually manufactured the same year that I was born. So that crisp packet is the same age as me in my hand there. And that really shows the durability and longevity of plastic. Whatever plastic we use in our day-to-day life is here to stay. And this photograph went on the front page of the Daily Telegraph the day that Theresa May, the Prime Minister at the time, announced the government's action plan against plastic, a 25-year action plan. Now, for us at Beach Guardian, 25 years is just far too long, and we wanted to see action and changes happening now. And that's when we really knew that we had to really make tracks with this movement that we had started on. So what do we actually do now? Well, I suppose the work that we do at Beach Guardian can be divided into five different areas, really. The first of which is outreach and media. And this is really on the ground stuff where we're engaging with volunteers and just people in our community against plastic pollution. So this is predominantly the beach cleans. We've organised over 200 beach clean events now, engaging with over 5,000 volunteers, and it's a really fantastic thing to do, beach cleaning. I'm going to talk about this a little bit later, but when you do beach cleaning, it's not just about picking up plastic from the environment. It's so much more than that. You know, the conservation conversations that we have down on the beach in front of all of the beach goers, it's just that whole ripple effect. It starts from one conversation on the beach and one little beach clean, and it just transfers into every aspect of your life. Once your eyes have been opened to the plague of plastic, you can't really unsee it. And we were doing all of these beach cleans and collecting tons and tons of waste, and it didn't seem right to take the plastic off the beach and just put it in the bin again and put it back into the waste stream, because there are areas of it that aren't necessarily the most sustainable. So we thought, well, let's go back to my idea when I was 11 years old. Why can't we use this plastic as an educational resource? Why can't we completely get rid of that whole wasteful mindset and view this waste that we're finding as a resource? And it was then that we developed our education program. So we've been very lucky at Beach Guardian to have phenomenal support from our community. And really, you know, we started Beach Guardian because there was a desire in our community to do something, and it's because of that community that's enabled us to grow. So one of the first facilities that we got was this polytunnel that you see at the top there. That's at Trevisca Garden Centre. And then the bottom facility is what we call the Beach Guardian Mission Centre, shortened to ERIC. And that was donated to us from one of our local families. So really, really fantastic. And basically what we do, all of the stuff that we collect on our beach cleans, we take to these facilities and we sort them out, and we can use those as a resource. So if you just look at these photos here, when I see these, I really do find it mind-blowing, because all of that waste there that you see, that is literally just what we've been finding in the last 3 years on just a 10-mile stretch of coastline. So when you see it all concentrated like that, you really can, you know, see the scale of this problem. It's huge. But if all of that was dumped on the beach in just one day, it would be an environmental disaster. People would be an outcry. But because it's been so staggered over 3 years and over a 10-mile stretch, it doesn't seem to be as big of an issue as it is. But when you see it like that, you can really begin to understand what we're up against. And it's my lovely job to sort through all of that. All of those blue bags are individual beach cleans. So I have to pull out a bag, tear it open, sort through it, a bit like what you see in these photos, clean it, sort it into different colours. And it's this that we've been taking into schools all over the United Kingdom for our educational workshops. And again, it's just that reinforcing that it's a resource and getting rid of that wasteful mindset. And it's really lovely to see what the children are coming up with. Now, another avenue of what we do at Beach Guardian is working with businesses, because I heard this analogy, I think, last year, which was, if you've got a leaky sink in your bathroom, you wouldn't spend year after year mopping up the floor. You'd fix the tap. I thought, we can spend year after year after year cleaning up the plastics, mopping up the floor, but we have to fix the plastic tap. We have to stop all of these huge corporations pumping plastic into the ocean at the rate that they are today. And it was then that I knew that we had to start collaborating and working with some of these big organizations. And the photos there are when we had a fantastic collaboration with Nissan. And Nissan approached us last year, or was it 2008? I think it was 2018. But they approached us and said, okay, Beach Guardians, we've seen that you've got some big problems with plastic on your beach and we would like to help. We have pimped out this big truck of ours to become the beach cleaning truck, and we would like to volunteer it with you to help you with some of your issues. And it really was epic. It had huge, great big wheels, armor plating all underneath. It had a snorkel on it. It had cameras all the way around the outside so you could see all the plastic as you're driving along the beach. It was fantastic. And I do have a short video here just to show you what we got up to with Nissan. Hopefully the sound will work. When you stand on a beach or the cliff and you've just got land and ocean and it's open, there's no barriers, everything just comes together and it's just completely breathtaking.
There is so much about the coastline that is stunning. A big piece of the land will suddenly change overnight due to the dramatic power of the sea. It can bring in different things washed up on that tide line. We have people that are individually doing their own small beach cleans from the easily accessible beaches. But some of the places that we find, we've got rocks to get over, we've got great big verges to drive through, and it's a real struggle to try and find any vehicle that will be able to get down there.
My dad and I started Beach Guardian as a sort of hub. We want to encourage community, people working together, people coming together.
Not until you're down in the sand and allowing the grains of sand to slip through your fingers that you're left with a handful of plastics. The big bottles and the bigger items are now breaking down into these smaller pieces that are washing up on our beaches.
We noticed the nets about 2 years ago. They're completely buried in tons of sand.
Sometimes these nets can be in the sand for years. You can't easily get those items off the beach. The problem is a global problem. Every beach, everywhere in the world is having plastics washed up on it, and people in their communities are coming up with solutions.
The response we've had so far is so inspiring that it just makes me so excited for the future to see what Beach Guardian can do and the difference that we can make. Wow, it's so lovely seeing that video again. I haven't seen that since before Christmas. So yeah, it was a fantastic collaboration that we had with Nissan, and since engaging with them, they now give all of their global staff 2 paid days a year to volunteer in their community, and this is for beach cleaning or any other opportunity or volunteering that helps the community. And also they've now increased the recycled plastic content in their vehicles, so a really fantastic collaboration for us and still ongoing now. So another organisation that we're more recently working with is Walkers. So Walkers is owned by PepsiCo, and PepsiCo also own all those other organisations that you see there. And PepsiCo is the second largest food and drink manufacturer in the world. So they're a big player in this game, and they're also in the top sort of polluting organisations, in the plastic polluting organisations in the world. And as you saw from the front page of the Telegraph, we find crisp packets on our beach cleans that are the same age as me, if not older. The oldest packet that we have now found is from, I think, 1969. Now that's almost the same age as my mum, but don't tell her I said that, obviously. But it just shows that these plastics are really becoming, a part of history. It's so heartbreaking for me to see that this plastic is still here today after 50, sort of nearly 60 years. And I wanted to send a message to walkers and to PepsiCo, and I wanted to really bring attention to the plastic problem that we were finding down here. But I knew, because PepsiCo is such a big organisation, that I had to do something that would warrant their attention. So for my graduation from my marine biology degree at Plymouth University, I decided to wear this dress that I made out of Walker's crisp packets. And it did exactly what I needed it to do. Walkers knew who I was. And I had some fantastic opportunities following on from that. Sky News, BBC, really bringing attention to the topic that I wanted to bring into the eyes of the public, and gave me a voice to talk about plastic pollution. And I said, live on Sky News, they said, what do you suggest to what can walkers do to move forward? And I suggested, well, there's already an organisation called TerraCycle. They specialise in recycling things that are unrecyclable curbside. All walkers need to do is offer a take-back system where they can collect crisp packets and send them off to be recycled. Well, lo and behold, following on from that interview, this popped up in the news: Walker's crisp packet recycling scheme announced. And then nearly 2 years ago, actually, which was absolutely phenomenal, Walker's launched his recycling scheme after storm over crisp packets. And now anywhere in the UK, you can set yourself up as a collection point. You can collect crisp packets and you can recycle them. And not only does that reduce the amount of plastic waste, but also you can raise money through the recycling of the crisp packets for various charities. So it's a fantastic scheme that they brought out, and they really listened to what I said. And I really feel that this scheme is quite revolutionary, because with plastic packaging, it's almost this chicken and egg scenario that we have with, as campaigners, really. We could say, oh, well, or we could say, it wouldn't be a problem if it was littered, if it wasn't plastic. But then walkers, for example, could say, well, our plastic wouldn't matter if you didn't litter it. So it's very, who does the blame go on to? And for the first time, walkers showed that they were willing to take that responsibility away from the consumer, and they were going to actually introduce something to be able to give people, the right option of dealing with waste. And it's really fantastic that they did that, and it really showed me again that I was on the right path. And it's a real privilege to be continue to work with them. And then the other two avenues really that we work in is collaboration. Obviously, our voices are only ever going to be louder if we work together. So we're always looking to collaborate with as many different people, organisations as we possibly can. And then research, as Sam mentioned, I'm currently doing my master's, and Sam's my course mate. So I'm currently looking into the bacterial colonisation of microplastics, and I've sampled microplastics from the areas that we're actually doing our cleanup events, and looking into whether microplastics select for pathogens, and whether they're also, their involvement in the dissemination of antibiotic resistance. So hopefully I'll have some really cool and interesting research to tell everybody soon. Now, something I really briefly just want to touch on that I've come across in my work through Beach Guardian and our work in our community is this term eco-anxiety. And it's a state of stress caused by concern for the Earth's environment. And we see this particularly in schools, which I think is quite worrying. The school children really feeling this weight on their shoulders of, what does the future hold? What has the damage that's happened to our planet? How are they ever going to reverse that? And it's really, really worrying when we see that stress and that anxiety in the next generation. But something that I'd much rather focus on and enforce is ecotherapy. And I don't actually necessarily agree with this term, because I think it sounds a bit like a crazy scientist who's going to strap you to a chair and throw trees at you until you're happy. I don't think it's a very good term at all. But really what it means is that by reconnecting with nature and, you know, just being outdoors and breathing the fresh air, that improving your mental and physical well-being. And I've really found this through, for myself personally, through my beach cleaning. And I've had the absolute privilege to see this in our volunteers. And this is what I was talking about in the beginning. You know, a beach clean isn't just a beach clean. It's not just picking up rubbish from a beach. It's so much more than that. And as well as bringing, you know, conservation benefits, it brings mental health benefits with it too. And there's lots and lots of research behind this. But one particular study that really, I think, captures exactly how you know, the environment can help your mental health and well-being is one of the biggest studies really that's ever been undertaken, and it looks at the elderly going into care homes. Now, unfortunately, one of the biggest stats to come out of this research is that within 1 year, 50% of the elderly going into care homes will die. Now, to reduce this amount significantly, you don't have to give any, you know, particular miracle medicine. There's no, you know, magical therapy or anything like that. All you have to do is give them a house plant, just one plant, a potted plant in their room or the communal space. Just one plant can significantly reduce deaths and that anxiety and stress. Now, the reason behind this is because that one plant gives them purpose, a passion, something to get up for in the morning, and that sense of control over your life again. And without my knowing it, I had found my house plant in beach cleaning, and by having that passion and that purpose and control over my life, it's allowed me to thrive more than I ever believed I could. And I can see that in my volunteers too. You know, a few years ago, I had a really, really tough time. I think it was, my third year at uni, really stressful. And I went into hospital to have facial reconstruction surgery. And I knew I was going to have this surgery for years and years and years. So I prepared myself for it physically. I was ready for the physical pain, but I hadn't quite prepared myself mentally to go into hospital and to have that experience of you know, it's horrible to be in hospital for a prolonged period of time, and you really find, you know, dark areas of your mind. I've got a really horrible picture, but I'm just going to flick through it because it's really gross. There we go, that was it. But then as I came out of hospital and I began beach cleaning again and finding my feet again and working with Beach Guardian, I was kind of doing all of these fantastic things in parallel to a really stressful and traumatic event in my life. How was I able to balance the two opposites together and be thriving and doing unimaginable things, you know, getting a letter from David Attenborough and working with global media and all of these, you know, just bizarre, crazy things that I still can't even believe I've had the opportunity to do. How could I do that alongside some, you know, traumatic events in my life? And the answer just simply was that I was out in nature and I had my beach cleaning, I had my potted plant to help me thrive and to get through that. And that's what we like to do with Beach Guardian, is to use that with our volunteers. And it's not just our volunteers, but also, as I say, collaborating and working with groups of vulnerable people. You know, we have a scheme with foster carers, we have a scheme with people with sensory issues and learning difficulties. And to see them down on the beach, you get to literally see with your eyes that the transition of them, and they just become themselves. And it's just a fantastic thing to witness in everybody that joins us on a beach clean. And I suppose to finish, really, this moment was probably the one thing in my life I would closely describe to an epiphany moment. So this photo was taken, I went to a conference at PepsiCo head office in Reading, and that's me sat on a panel with, you know, the general manager of PepsiCo, and in the audience is hundreds of PepsiCo's employees from around the UK. And I'm sat on this panel absolutely pooing myself. I've never been more scared before in my life. And I kind of looked at the audience and I suddenly realised, it was almost like a panic actually. I almost had this panic where people described the year 2050 as this kind of post-apocalyptic time. You know, the seas are full of plastic and there's no fish left, and or you know, the sea levels have risen, or there's barren wasteland. It just sounds, you know, people describe 2050 as a place you don't want to be. And I was looking around this audience and, you know, quite a lot of people were middle-aged, and I thought, by 2050 I'm only going to be about 50 years old. I'm only going to be middle-aged. I'm only going to be at the same point in my life as a lot of people in this room. And for a second, as I say, I felt this panic that I was going to be there. But then it very quickly turned to excitement. And let me explain before you think I'm egging on the apocalypse. But knowing that I was going to be there in 2050, I can't explain how excited that makes me feel, because all through school and all through my life, you know, in education, we learn about history, we learn about these events, you know, wars and huge parts of human history, and you can marvel at it, but you can never be part of it. And we think about the future, you know, the year 3000, oh my goodness, flying cars and jetpacks, and we can think about it, but we can never be part of it. But 2050, hopefully, we are going to be part of, and I am going to be there. And the reason that it made me feel excited was because I knew that I had this empowerment from beach cleaning and working with my community and surrounded by passionate volunteers, that I can decide what 2050 looks like. It doesn't have to be post-apocalyptic. I can decide to take my power as an individual, and I can continue to instigate and drive positive change. And I can also use that to help other people find that empowerment, especially in my community, but also, you know, further afield by using social media and so on. And that's really the message that I'm trying to, you know, highlight and reinforce, is that we all have a power as an individual to determine what the future holds. And my favorite quote of all time is, I can't remember it word for word, but it's something like, the worst thing that we can do for the environment is think that somebody else will fix it. And Pat Smith from Final Straw Cornwall, she had an answer to that, and it's simply, I am somebody. The worst thing that we can do for the environment is think that somebody else will do it. I am somebody, and I can do something. And as I say, we can determine what 2050 looks like. So again, thank you so much for joining me this evening, and I really welcome any questions you might have. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Emily. That was an amazing talk.
Thanks, Sam.
I just love hearing you talk about that, because I think it can get quite depressing, I suppose, when, you know, we have so many challenges in this world today, and I suppose it can feel a bit overwhelming at times. So it's nice to think about the fact that the way you phrased it as I am somebody, I think that's a really powerful message, and I hope it will resonate with lots of people, like it does with me.
Thank you.
For sure. So yeah, thank you so much. So if any of you have any questions, as I'm sure you all will, you've already been posting some in the chat, but yeah, if you have any more, please continue to post them. I'll just give you a bit of time to post your questions there, by asking Emily, I guess, a question of my own, which would be, I think, one thing, maybe, I don't know if you would agree with this, but for me, I think a challenge that gets in the way of people actually taking action is the ease of things. And I think there are several movements, I guess, towards reducing plastic pollution. Things like, my mum, bless her, she spends hours and hours filling plastic bottles full of plastic and sending them off to, I think it's called Eco Brick.
Yeah.
Also, you mentioned TerraCycle, and I guess it's because you have to go out of your way to, it doesn't, it's not something you can just chuck in the bin straight away. You have to sort of actually find a place where you can recycle it with TerraCycle. Sometimes you have to spend quite a lot of time doing these things. I suppose maybe that kind of stands in the way of some people. So I don't know, do you have any thoughts on that, about what you think maybe companies could do to improve engagement with these schemes?
I think that's such a good question, and really, really important actually. And something that I'm quite passionate about is that I feel that conservation has been built up as almost this stigma that it's only for the privileged, and to be a volunteer you have to give hours and hours of your time. You have to be a vegan, or you have to go and work at the the food bank for 2 weeks. You have to give and give and give. But actually, being a volunteer and being a conservationist really needs redefining, in my opinion. And it can really start with the simplest of things, of just having a reusable drinks bottle. Just having that, you're a conservationist and you're doing your bit. Another really good quote that I think perfectly encapsulates this is, we don't need a few people doing it perfectly, but instead we need everybody to try. And that's exactly what I believe. Obviously, if you can give loads and loads and be a real eco warrior, then by all means do that. But I don't think we're gonna save the world by everybody having to make lots and lots of sacrifices. I think by everybody doing their own bit and also acknowledging that as an achievement. I think, even if you just go to the supermarket and instead of buying a plastic wrapped bag of potatoes, you get a non-wrapped potato on its own, that you have to feel good in yourself for doing that. You have to kind of give yourself a pat on the back and say, yes, actually, okay, I did good today. I helped the environment. It's not all about doing these huge, great big things, but it's all about all the little things coming together. So I definitely think that that's what should be enforced in people, and that's what the perhaps media could put attention onto, of everyday people doing everyday things and not just the big global campaigns.
Yeah, definitely. I think if one person does one thing on its own, it may seem like it's not very much, but if everyone does that one thing, then it becomes a bigger thing. Definitely.
Yeah.
And that leads on to something that Henry said, sort of saying that he thinks that now the message has got across about how bad plastic pollution is, and that people are starting to wake up to that, which is obviously a really good thing. What he's saying is what we now need are ideas on how to live without it. And you have kind of touched on it there. But I suppose, when you go into the supermarket, it's not always easy to always avoid plastic. It seems to kind of feed its way into life, however hard you try to avoid it. So I suppose, do you have any sort of top tips on how to avoid plastic in your day-to-day life?
It's a good question. I think, you're so right. Plastic is everywhere. Looking around me now, all I see is plastic. Probably most of what I'm wearing is plastic. You really can't get away from it. But I think it's also important to remember that plastic isn't necessarily the enemy here. It's just the ways in which we use them. And it's okay to continue to use plastic in our lives. It's just the single-use plastic that we have to get rid of, really. There are so many uses for plastic as a material that have really helped us grow as society. In the healthcare industry, for example, the use of plastic and keeping things sterile has probably saved countless lives. But if we continue to use single-use plastics, then it's drawing away resources from the uses that we really do need. And I think when you start looking at it like that, you kind of see the importance of why, it's not just getting a reusable drinks bottle. It's so much more than that. So I know I keep saying it, reusable drinks bottle is a great place to start. But other things as well, you kind of have to go backwards to go forward. So carrying around a lunchbox or reusable cutlery and that kind of thing. I'll see if I can put a link in the chat, or maybe later on I can send it and you can put it out on your mailing list. But there's a great blog post on a blogging website called By the Compass, and they've set out some really fantastic steps of how we can all be conservationists from our own homes, because of course with the current situation that we're in, you know, you can't just say, oh, to be a conservationist you've got to go do a beach clean, because that's not really ideal for everybody right now. So there are actually ways in which that you can help the planet from not even leaving your desk. So that's a really good place to start as well, and I'll send it to you and you can send it out. That's okay.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, so David has a question regarding your collaboration with Nissan, saying, did you get a fleet of those cars to keep for Beach Guardian?
I wish we did ask, but we didn't get that truck, but the local Nissan dealership in Truro have helped us a lot with another truck that we use, which has been fantastic, because just being able to move all of our beach cleaning equipment from beach clean to beach clean and transporting all of this waste, and especially when big nets wash in. I was just driving my little VW Polo around and you can't fit the nets in there. So we did have support from the local Truro Nissan dealership to get a Nissan truck, but not a fleet, by no means a fleet, unfortunately. And it doesn't have a snorkel, it doesn't have armour plating or anything like that.
Shocking.
Outrageous.
Okay, so Susanna has said that fishyfilaments.com recycle fishing nets into engineering grade filament for 3D printing. I've also come across several companies, for example, I can't remember the name of it now, but there's a wetsuit company, like a surf company, that creates new products out of recycled plastic. And I suppose a question that can come from that really is that I think it's great when plastic gets repurposed. But do you think it really tackles the problem? Because ultimately, there's still, when those products are used to their capacity, you're still going to have plastic waste at the end of it.
That is such a good question, and I totally agree. I think you're thinking of Fourth Element, maybe, the wetsuits. Yeah. So there's, God, this is going to look bad, but I can't remember exactly what it is. But there's this thing called the waste hierarchy, and it's basically a triangle. Can't remember which way, but it basically depicts the ways in which we should address waste, and it always goes reduce, reuse, and then recycle. So the best thing that we can possibly do is reduce. So just stop buying it in the first place, just stop putting it out for consumers, and then, you know, what are we going to do with the waste? And then find reusing ways, so reusable drinks bottle. And then finally, recycling is the final option, because of course the problem that we've got with recycling is that at the moment our recycling it's not really circular. You don't put a plastic bottle in and end up with a plastic bottle at the other end, really, because all of our waste is pretty much commingled together. So you don't really get high grade plastics out of our recycling anymore. It goes high grade to low grade. So if we could have this scheme where we put milk bottle in and get a milk bottle out at the other end, then that would be perfect. If we could put a wetsuit in and get a wetsuit out at the other end, then that would be perfect. Changing a fishing net into a wetsuit is kind of the best that we can get at the moment. But it's just made me think of something, actually, that it kind of goes back to the reusing, actually. So we found this string of lobster pots washing up on the beach, and we would usually give that to the Ocean Recovery Project and they would turn it into ocean-going kayaks. But a fisherman saw that we found them and he actually took them back. They weren't his or anything like that, but he took them and he's fixed them, and he's now using them for what they were originally designed for. Now, for me, that's the kind of ultimate goal, to keep things in circular and reinforce that circular economy. We can't have that linear, buy a product, use it, chuck it away. We need to keep things going round and round.
Yeah, definitely. And I think when you showed all those bags that you'd collected, it just shows you how much waste there really is. And like I mentioned earlier, my mum, she collects all this plastic, and it's horrendous. It makes you feel sick when you look at it, because, you know, you can pick up a packet of peppers in the shop and that's just, you know, oh, it's in plastic, but then, you know, all the plastic that you obtain, it's crazy. And obviously a lot of that can't be recycled. So Yeah, and you can chuck something in the recycling and sort of pat yourself on the back and think you've done the best that you can, but
Yeah,
like you said, it doesn't necessarily actually do very much to solve the overall problem.
yeah, you're right.
That sounds a bit negative, I didn't mean it to. So Robin says, Emily, you clearly have a gift for leveraging the attention of some big companies. How did you learn these skills? Are you in contact with other activists to share this learning curve?
I just fake it till I make it, really. Well, I think we're very, very lucky in the kind of environmental community that everybody is very, we all share the same goal. So to work together is always in everybody's best interest. And I'm so lucky to have made so many fantastic connections in the environmental community, with Keep Britain Tidy, and they've got a nationwide set of ambassadors, and we all help each other. It's all very, it is that sense of community and sharing of ideas, sharing of best practices, and promoting and showcasing each other as well. I would never have got kind of the voice that I've got now without other people helping me get onto this platform, and continuing to do that. Even today, people were always helping support me, and I'm forever grateful for that. So I guess as a piece of advice to follow on from that is to always showcase other people, because they will do the same to you, and that's really the best way, is to keep building each other up. And yeah, as I say, we're all sharing the same goal, so if we can all achieve it together and make our voices louder together, then that's the ultimate kind of dream.
Yeah, there's definitely something very empowering about feeling a part of something. I think if you're just one person, it can feel a bit like, whoa, how can I tackle this all? But yeah, when there are lots of people like you putting yourself out there and sort of showing the work that communities do, it definitely is a very uplifting feeling.
Absolutely.
So I've got another sort of discussion point from Robin, and I've heard of this as well. So he's saying that he believes that the local Extinction Rebellion people are packaging up supermarket packaging rubbish and sending it in envelopes to the head office with no stamps on the envelope, so they have to pay for the cost. What do you think of these tactics?
It's interesting, actually, because following on from the Walker's dress thing, there was a campaign launched where people were sending their crisp packets back, and I think that was a big part of driving the Walker's recycling scheme as well, because I'm not sure whether it was just the sending of packaging back. It was mostly the upsetting of the Royal Mail that drew attention to it, because when people were sending their crisp packets back, they weren't putting it in envelopes, and it was clogging up the machines. So I should probably say, if you're going to do a campaign like that, just make sure you're doing it along the guidelines of the Royal Mail, because obviously they're a really key part of our society. I think it's a great idea, and it obviously works. I think anything that you can do as an individual and that you feel empowered to do is fantastic. There's never I just think, as I said, anything that you can do really, it's never going to do any harm, is it?
Yeah, well, that's true. So on the note of crisp packets, Sophie asked if you still have your dress that you made for your graduation.
I do still have it, but it absolutely stinks, because obviously, because it's got plastic all stuck to it, it can't go in the wash. And I wore it to these interviews on telly, so I was very nervous. So I was sweating and I couldn't wash it, so now it stinks. But also I took it to one of our outreach events that we did, something with one of our local Cubs and Beavers groups. And this little girl, bless her, she was looking at the dress and I knew she wanted to wear it. I could see it in her eye, and no one had ever worn it other than me. So I was like, okay, you can wear it. But because it's obviously sewed together crisp packets, you have to go into it like a pencil, and only when it's on you can put your arms down. And as it was halfway down over her head, this poor girl obviously panicked because she thought she was maybe trapped, and she just goes boom, and it ripped a bit of it.
Oh, no.
But it's fixed, it's all fine. And yes, I do still have it, definitely.
How
But
long did it take you to make it?
hours and hours, and I'm not a seamstress at all, and it was painful. And actually the picture looks great, it looks like a really well constructed item of clothing, but the closer you look, the worse it gets. It was actually really badly done, but I was just quite lucky that the colors are quite vibrant on the packet, so it looked quite good. But yeah, it was literally just me with a needle and thread kind of doing that for hours on end.
That's a good idea, really is.
Well, I do have another graduation coming up, hopefully.
Yeah, should make another one for that.
I need to think of some other ideas.
Definitely, yeah. I'll be disappointed if, you know, you've got to up your game now.
Well, I was thinking of making one out of dog poo bags, but I don't think people would very much appreciate that.
Just make the whole gown and the hat out of dog poo bags.
That's
nice.
what I was thinking. Oh, I'm giving it away now. It was going to be a surprise.
Oh no, I won't tell anyone. So another one from Robin, kind of going on from the previous thing he said. So apart from wanting to see less single-use plastics, are there whole groups of plastics that are seriously less recyclable than others?
Good question. Very good question. Actually, this gives me a great opportunity to give you my best recycling tip that I've got. So I think the worst is the soft film plastics, in my opinion, the plastic packaging that just cannot be recycled. But a lot of this plastic actually can be recycled, just not curbside. So plastic carrier bags, the inner of a cereal box, you know, that kind of clear plastic, the plastic shrink wrap for like multi-pack cans of pop, what else, bread bags, toilet roll bags, all of that can be recycled. It has a little symbol on it that says recycle with bags at larger stores, and that basically means that you can go up to your local supermarket, if it's a larger supermarket, and they'll have this crate kind of thing in the lobby, the entrance, and you can put all of those in there. So we kind of advise that with you got the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, recycle, and then we want to add another one, which is remember your reusable shopping bag. So you take your reusable shopping bag to the shop, filled with all of that packaging that I just described, dump it in the cage, fill up your shopping, take it home, and then repeat. So you're taking back your shopping bag filled with all of that recycling that you can recycle at the store, and so on. So that's my best piece of advice for unrecyclable stuff curbside.
Curbside sounds like
curbside.
So Susanna has said that there is a film called 2040 which looks at the effects of climate change and what technologies that exist today can reverse the effects. So I suppose kind of just thinking about that point, I guess sort of solutions to current problems will inevitably involve behavioural change as well as sort of technological adaptation. But I don't know, I suppose, what do you think is the most impactful thing? Obviously, as a community engagement person, you'd probably argue for the individual behaviour, but I suppose there is an element where we do need plastic, like you mentioned before. So I wonder what kind of extent technology can contribute to changing the way that we produce plastics.
Yeah, I think plastic pollution is just so multifaceted. There are so many different angles that you can come at it, and there isn't necessarily one solution. You know, it wouldn't just be community engagement. You need all of it to come together and all of us to kind of join forces to tackle it. So it will absolutely involve some, you know, technological innovations, and of course we need to, you know, reform our industry really, and infrastructure to actually be able to deal with the waste. And I'm really interested to see how bioplastics may develop in the future, and whether there's a different kind of material that we can use. But I do think we have to be really careful with you know, the compostables and biodegradables, because it'd be terrible to have that kind of knee-jerk reaction and think, oh, this is going to save us, and suddenly start pumping out all of the compostables and bioplastics, and then 50 years down the line we're looking at it like, well, maybe we shouldn't have done that. So I think with any advances and innovations, we have to really make sure it's the right one before we start pushing it out there. And I've suffered with this myself. When I first heard about biodegradable and home compostable plastics, I thought, well, hallelujah, we've found the answer, I can kind of stop now. But then I looked deeper into the problem and really started learning more about these materials and realized, well, actually, okay, they're not necessarily the best option for now. So I think we just have to be very careful how we play this. But obviously, community engagement is going to be the biggest driver.
Always the answer. Yeah, I think you made a good point there with the biodegradable stuff. I think it's very easy for companies to put a word to a product and make it sound good. And it took me a very long time to realise that biodegradable doesn't necessarily mean what it sounds it means. And I think, and things like the word sustainable, I think that's kind of become a buzzword that a lot of companies want to use. And can kind of use them a little bit, not so accurately. So I suppose it's a matter of sort of being wary as well, and really looking and making sure you understand what these things mean. So Henry has said, your recycling idea at the supermarket is very good, but the majority of my neighbours don't even curbside recycle yet. So with all you've learned, do you remain hopeful for the future?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think when I first started this, I was such a bad, environmentalist, such a bad campaigner, because my first instinct when I came up against a problem was to feel angry. And, fishing, for example, on our beach cleans, we find a lot of ghost fishing gear. And for the first sort of 6 months of Beach Guardian, I was very against the fishing industry, and I thought they were the enemy and I was going to campaign against them. But then as time went on, I learned that, for years and years and years, campaigners have kind of built up these walls against different industries, by gluing their bodies to BP and all these kinds of things. And I really feel like it's time to start breaking them down. We have to start working with all of the industries. It's not about being against them, it's working in unity with them. And I spent a lot of time with our local fishing industry down here, and I actually went out on one of our local fishermen's boat, and what I saw was actually closer to conservation than extractive and destructive methods. And it really showed to me that you cannot tar everybody with the same brush. And somebody said to me, I can't remember who it was, but it was so perfect. They said, you would never put a vegetable patch farmer in the same category as an industrial beef herder. So why would you do the same with the fishing industry? Why would you say that a single fisherman that puts a couple pots out is the same as the big industrial fleet that go out offshore and, are really just scooping out as much fish as they want? You can't do that. You have to showcase the sustainable methods and the sustainable practices, and encourage people to shop local and shop sustainable. And instead of just saying never eat fish, you have to be realistic and as I say, work in unity with people. So with the recycling, for instance, as you were just saying, if I was at the start of my kind of conservation career and heard that, I'd be like, oh, it's just ignorance. But now I think, okay, well, it's not their fault that they don't necessarily know the easy ways to do it, or they don't necessarily know why they should do it, or maybe they just need a little bit of inspiration. Maybe they feel that hopelessness, or what's the point if we're already doomed, and they actually just need a bit of support. And I think that's the best way of doing it. And I think that I actually had this question asked to me when I was at the conference at PepsiCo. Somebody in the audience, it was very raw and honest. She kind of said to me, Emily, are you hopeful for the future? Do you think it's too late? And my answer was that my little brother, he's 13, he's just started watching the Hunger Games, and President Snow, if you haven't watched it, he's like this big baddie in the Hunger Games. He says the only thing more powerful than fear is hope. And that's what I said to this woman. I said, the only way that we're ever going to solve this is if we focus on the positives and rely only on hope. We can't keep looking to the scaremongering of the media and being angry conservationists with pitchforks going after the oil industry. We have to work together and rely on that hope, because nobody is going to try and get on board with the campaign that they think is already doomed. So I think education and empowerment are the two greatest allies we're going to have in this.
Definitely. And I think as well, that kind of brings me on to asking you about your amazing letter that you got from David Attenborough. Because I think what he did so well, what the whole programme did really well in Blue Planet too, was the fact that they showed everyone how amazing our marine life is, how amazing our coastal areas are. And then they had a really impactful message at the end, like they get you interested and emotionally invested, and then sort of say, look, this is the problem. And I read an article by George Monbiot, and he was sort of criticising David Attenborough for not being forward enough in his message about conservation. And I actually disagreed with him, because I think that the needs to get people to care is definitely more important to begin with, because if you bash on about, oh, our planet is in such disarray and there's no hope and it's so terrible, look at all this plastic pollution, the whole way through, people are just going to switch off. And I think you're right, definitely, when you give people that sense of hope and a direction, a reason for wanting to help, that I think that definitely
There's music to my ears, Sam.
So what did this amazing letter receive? I think that me as a conservation student, would be my dream come true. I could die a happy person immediately if I got a message from David Attenborough. What did he say?
I should probably know this word for word. I did at one point. I kind of had it inscribed on my brain. It just said, thank you. It said, thank you for playing such a conspicuous role in the fight against plastic pollution, from David, or something like that.
That's amazing.
It was pretty special. It was just one of those moments. I've been so lucky to have moments like that have, allowed me to kind of acknowledge that I'm kind of doing the right thing. And that's why showcasing and promoting people is so important, and something I'm very passionate about is you have to give people that voice to be able to confirm to them that they're doing the right thing and empower them to go on further. So it was pretty special. It was like the best. But I don't know where it is now, actually. I think it's in a frame somewhere.
I hope it is.
Yeah,
I think that makes me think about maybe a bit more of a personal question for you, because obviously you've become pretty well known for what you do. Been on BBC, obviously had David Attenborough reach out to you. You've had a big impact, and I think that that's an incredible thing. And it's great to be sort of one individual that sort of come out of the blue. Great pun for marine pollution.
That was brilliant. Yeah, I like
Didn't
that.
plan that. You just sort of come out the blue and you're really engaging people. And I think people like Greta Thunberg are really important in exactly the same reason. But obviously I think Greta Thunberg has received quite a lot of criticism as well, from people who don't necessarily agree with her position as a young person coming into the world and telling older people who have been around for longer than her what to do and how they should act. Have you experienced any sort of feelings of people thinking that you, I don't know, saying anything that makes you sort of doubt what you're doing? Not that you have any reason to, but any difficult moments like that?
Oh, absolutely. I think, unfortunately, there's probably been just as many kind of bad moments as there have good. I think with anything, you have to kind of acknowledge that there's always going to be somebody that disagrees with you. And the best piece of advice I've ever had, because it used to really get me down, like the trolls and stuff like that. I would read it, and it really affected me, especially when what you're doing is, it's not really a job. It's not a job to me. It's who I am. It's everything I'm passionate about. So when somebody kind of comes against that, it really hurt me. And Joe Ruxton, who's the producer of A Plastic Ocean and literally my idol, she I'm in touch with her because I'm an ambassador for Plastic Ocean, and she also lives locally, and she's just a total legend. And she kind of saw that this was happening, and she said, don't worry about the trolls, because at least somebody is talking about you. You've won because they're talking about you. Right. And now every time that there's something coming up like that, it's just water off a duck's back. I'm just, you know, at least they're engaging in the conversation. And I actually almost encourage it now. I want to see those comments, because it's given me an opportunity to engage with people that I perhaps wouldn't be able to engage with. You know, the people that are kind of putting negative comments on my posts, they're never going to go to a beach clean and have a chat with me. So then I get my opportunity to talk to them. And as I said before, you know, maybe they just need support. Maybe they just need that hope. Maybe they just need some inspiring message to hang on to. And instead of me replying and saying, you know, you're wrong, blah, 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 you know, arguing back, I'd much rather say, you know, well, okay, well, I understand how you feel. This is how I feel. And usually it comes off much more positively that way. Or if it's, you know, a particularly horrible thing. My favorite one was somebody commented, don't worry, it's not swearing. Somebody commented, oh, you gender neutral tree hugger. And I was like, right, okay. So that kind of thing where there's literally no substance to it, we kind of just ignore. And that's when the community angle comes in. Other people on our pages will then comment and kind of back you up. So another good piece of advice, if you're on, you know, trying to build up a social media presence, just don't comment back to negative comments like that, really, because it's never, you're not really going to achieve a productive outcome, I don't think. But yeah, there's definitely been negative moments, and actually particularly as a woman as well, there's been some backlash that I've experienced. You know, women in conservation, there's definitely hurdles to, and for men as well, totally. I remember this one particular time which really upset me, was when I was just starting to kind of do a few bits with the BBC and that kind of thing, and somebody said to me, well, they only want to see you, or we only want to see you because you're a young attractive woman. And they probably meant that as a compliment. And, you know, at first I didn't quite understand how much it hurt me, but looking back at it, what really upset me was that they couldn't see past the fact that I was a young woman. All they saw me for was a young woman. They couldn't see me for my passion. They couldn't see me for the 3 years that I studied a marine biology degree. They couldn't see me for the masters that I was about to go on and do. They couldn't see me for any of the hours that I'd spent researching and looking into this. They literally couldn't see past the fact that I was a young woman. And I think there are so many systemic issues that are very similar to that, ingrained in lots of areas of our life. But again, I think it really comes back to remaining positive, never going on the kind of angry assault, but always looking at it and trying to find the best positive and hopeful outcome from something like that. And it really just inspired me to you know, show them that, well, if that's all you can see me for, then I'm going to prove to you that that's not all that I'm worth, and made me want to go on and do more and more to really prove that kind of image of just being a young woman. Yeah, so prove it wrong.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah,
okay.
Personal question, but yeah, no, I think it's important to talk about, because I suppose it's such, you know, such a big issue, and to be one voice can be amazing and very empowering in a lot of ways. But I can imagine, like you've just discussed, it can lead to a whole array of downfalls. But people will always come up with arguments against anything that anyone says, really. I think, you know, and in a way, like you said, I think it's really useful to frame it like that, to suggest that you know, you're engaging with people that otherwise probably wouldn't be engaging with you anyway. And so if at least, you know, you can put it on a positive spin like you have and be able to engage with people, they might be able to take something away from it as well. So
Hopefully,
yeah, I think that's a really encouraging way to look at things. Sophie has said, back to sort of the biodegradable stuff, she said that biodegradable straws are a joke. I agree. They don't biodegrade in water, you must compost them in a particular way. So again, that goes back to sort of like the difficulties of stuff. And I have found that my friends through uni have always got this joke around saving the turtles and not using straws. And that winds me up so much because it's become that thing like, oh, you know, we can't use plastic because we've got to save the turtles. And I think that's an issue in the sense that people dissociate, I suppose, with the issue and how it affects us. And I think sometimes if you don't have that innate interest in wildlife, someone comes along and says to you, you know, we've got to stop using plastics because it's killing the ocean animals like the turtles, and ultimately they can turn around and say, yeah, but like, why should I care? So yeah, I think, like, do you have any thoughts on what makes a good message for those people that don't necessarily see the importance of protecting wildlife and rather protecting our environment for our own well-being and health?
yeah, I think that's such an important point, because what I've had to learn is that, you know, not everybody likes the beach, which I can't understand, but I've had to accept that. And you can't be a kind of conservationist by trying to project your values and your beliefs on somebody else. Nobody is going to change their habits because you told them to. What you have to do is try and help them to see it through their eyes and develop their own opinion on it and develop their own passion for it. And that is when I think beach cleaning is a really good tool, because we have it so many times when families will come to the beach and the kids are really, really engaged, and the parents are kind of just there to give the kids something to do for an hour, or maybe it's the other way around. But then you say to them, all right, this is what we're going to do, this is what you need to look out for, here's your equipment, off you go. And they come back after an hour, and not only have they kind of reconnected as a family because they've had such a great time, they've also reconnected with nature. And you see them fighting over bits of plastic and competing to who can find the most. And as I said at the start, the switch is kind of flicked from there. And once they've seen it, they can't unsee it. And the beaches that they've spent their whole lives walking on, somebody said, well, actually, look at the plastic. And they go, oh my goodness, it's like they've been blind this entire time. And then once they've seen it, they'll see it on every beach they go on. They'll see it as they're driving around. They see it, you know, on the streets by their house. And then they start making the subconscious changes in their lives. You know, they're in the supermarket and they choose something that's plastic free over something that's not. So I think it's all about, and it's not just with plastic pollution, with any environmental issue, you have to find that one way of not drilling it into somebody, but allowing them to see it and make their own mind up over it. That's kind of this subconscious change. They don't really know it's happened, but it's then that ripple effect that flows on from that. And that's why I think education and acquiring knowledge over it is such a beautiful way of doing it as well, because you know, you think you're learning about a topic and you think you're just learning about that, but once you start, your brain starts going, you start thinking about it in different areas of your life as well. So I definitely think it's not so much about all of the very active, you know, big movements. It's, as I said before, it's all about the little stuff, the things that we do in our everyday life, that, you know, you don't think it's making a big difference, but really it's kind of the bigger picture kind of thing.
Totally, yeah. So we've got a couple of things here about circular economy, which you mentioned. So Jim has said that the circular economy is a pretty big player, really changing thinking in the global economy. And Robin has said that we've had some preliminary discussions with folk with the university in town about a talk on the ways to promote the circular economy idea, starting in Falmouth. And he says we must invite you to take part in a talk with them. So yeah, I guess there's not really any questions about that, but just sort of yeah, the circular economy thing seems to be pretty important to this situation.
Yeah, and I'd absolutely love that. And if you're interested in looking into the circular economy a little bit more, maybe you this is what you're referencing with the university, but there's just a total hub of knowledge and innovation happening at the Penryn campus with the TEVI project. And they're all about the circular economy, and there's you know, professors specializing in the circular economy, all working towards ways of ingraining that into society. So they've got loads of webinars and stuff like that running as well. And yeah, it sounds like you might already be in touch with them, but yeah, it's them. Okay, but they're great.
Well, thank you so much, Emily. I think we've kind of reached the end of the questions. If there are any last questions, feel free to post them, everyone, but thank you for your engagement today. I think we can kind of wrap up shortly if there aren't any other questions. I think Robin wanted to make an announcement is the word I'm looking for, about the kind of what we've got going on next week. So if Robin, are you kind of happy if we move on to that now, or should we give it a little bit longer?
Unmute. Yeah, sure. I mean, I'll say a little bit now, and then that gives time so that if other people do think of any last minute questions they have, you can always, you know, don't stop now. Yeah, a couple of announcements. We mentioned, for those who were here at the beginning, but for those who joined later, we, as an organisation, we have an annual general meeting, because all organisations have to do that kind of thing. At this stage, we don't have a membership. So we don't have an AGM with the membership able to vote on stuff. But one of the things we're going to be discussing is whether or not and how we could develop a membership structure, broaden out, have more people participating in making things happen. That's going to be next Thursday. And so at the end of our formal bit, we're going to open up and have and invite anybody else to come and give their views and talk over with us where we might go in future as an organisation.
Sorry, Robert, there was some confusion over the dates. It's Thursday after next week, so on the 25th of June.
Sorry, is that not what I said? Thursday after next week?
If you did, then I got it wrong.
Oh,
anyway,
no,
so
actually,
25th of June.
You're right. Maybe I said Thursday of next week. I lose track. Secondly, an example of that kind of attempt to be more open and engaging, we thought we'd try an experiment next week for our next week's Wednesday evening discussion. We're going to have what we're going to call a science soapbox. It's a bit like a sort of show and tell. We want to invite all of the people who have been involved with any of our discussions to suggest one or two at least, particular things that they've seen in the press, an article you might have read, a talk you might have watched as a video or a TED talk or whatever. Anything that's grabbed your attention and that seems to you to be particularly interesting, exciting, important, science related, obviously because that's our field, but we're pretty broad about what we mean by science after all. So that's going to be, we'll send out some more information on it, but we're calling it a science soapbox because this is your opportunity. We are inviting the people who have been otherwise the audience to tell us what you think is really particularly interesting and exciting. And we'll get people then asking questions, hopefully, that you can then reply to, so you all become speakers. It is, as I say, an experiment. We've never tried this before, but hopefully we'll get some people coming up with what you think are interesting, cutting-edge issues in science at the moment. The week after, I wanted to mention as well that we have Liam Shoesmith, one of the people in the gardening department at Truro City, who's been very involved with the Urban Buzz and the Bug Life program. We've had a number of talks on insects and the rewilding and the appreciating of insects. Liam is a plants man, and he's going to be getting us a chance to appreciate more a lot of the extraordinary greenery that we're now suddenly getting flowering and growing up in all the streets around us. And finally, just the last thing to mention, there's a lot of talk. There's a lot of talk about the R number. Keeping the R number down is the secret to defeating the COVID-19 virus. But I just thought I would give a little plug. This Friday is the virtual Falmouth Sea Shanty Festival. I believe it's going to be on Facebook. So it's something we can all just sit in and enjoy. And I've been told that it's been described as a way of increasing the AHAR rate. Sorry, folks, I just couldn't resist passing it on as a joke. Okay, so that's enough of announcements. Anything else? Anybody else? Sam, I'll pass it back to you.
Well, thank you, Robin. Yeah, so I think everyone's asked all their questions. So Emily, thank you so much for coming. It's been a really amazing talk. I think it's just, yeah, you're an amazing speaker and very
inspirational, absolutely inspirational.
Definitely. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Point, you're welcome. At this point, we normally do an awkward round of applause. So if David wants to unmute everyone and we can applaud Emily in a nice virtual and slightly awkward way.
I'll applaud you, Sam, because you did a great job chairing that. So
we can applaud each other.
Are we all